So my name is Jamie Hinson-Rieger. I'm the minister here at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Indianapolis, and it is a huge delight and honor to welcome you to this very special concert tonight here at UUI with William Harvey in honor of the Afghan refugee families here in Indianapolis. So I promise I'm not going to speak for more than a second. I do not want to be the person standing between you and that man and his violin, but I did want to extend a very special welcome to our families, the Qadri family, the Sadakat family, the Sobhani family, and the Sirat family. Welcome to Indianapolis. I want to welcome any of our Afghan friends and family who I may have missed or who are joining us online tonight. I want to welcome our friends from Trinity Episcopal. And I want to take a moment to just give a very special word of thanks to the people at UUI who are spearheading our Exodus program, Melissa Borja, Liz Venata, and Poyan Lotfi. They're doing tremendous work, leading up a team of many people who are doing tremendous work. So I'm grateful to them, grateful for the work that they are doing in this community, and I am grateful to you for letting us be a part of your lives. And finally, I want to thank Gary and Helene Hodek for taking the charge and helping make this concert happen tonight. And now, without further ado, I would like to welcome up Mr. William Harvey.
Perhaps I'd like to start by explaining a bit of my connection to Afghanistan. For those of you who don't already know, I was a freshman at the Juilliard School in New York City during the attack of September 11th, 2001. And being there at that time changed my life and made me want to see what could I do as a musician to heal the wounds that were so obviously present in our world at that time and which remain today. So reading about the fall of the Taliban, I remember an article from November 20th, 2001 in the New York Times. They interviewed a 16-year-old named Ajmal from Jalalabad, referring to the Taliban's prohibition on music. He said, "I have not heard music in so long, words don't describe how I think I will feel when I finally hear it again." And those words really stuck with me, and I thought, what kind of impact would it make on him for the person to offer that gift of music to him to be an American? So in January 2002, I called the State Department and said I wanted to play concerts in Afghanistan. And they sort of laughed me off the phone because they said, well, there's a war going on. We don't really do stuff like that anymore. And even if we did, you're a student, so we wouldn't fund you. So I thought, well, I have to do this sort of thing on my own. So in 2005, with the help of UUI member Dr. Everold Hossain, I started Cultures in Harmony, a nonprofit organization to promote cultural understanding through music with projects in countries ranging from Pakistan to Cameroon. But I never gave up on that dream of going to Afghanistan. So in 2009, when a friend sent me a job opportunity to teach at the new Afghanistan National Institute of Music, founded by Dr. Ahmad Sarmast, the first Afghan with a doctorate in music, I jumped at the opportunity to send him my CV and application letter. I got the job, and then in March of 2010, in fact, the date was March 21st of 2010, so 12 years ago tomorrow, I arrived in Afghanistan a little over 8 years after the State Department told me I would probably never go there. I lived there for 4 years, taught violin, viola, cello, and bass, conducted the orchestra, arranged the concerts, arranged the tours, managed the website, did a lot of different things basically, and they were the 4 years that were the best years of my professional life. Every single day I felt like what I was doing was making a difference, that I was helping Dr. Sarmast in his extraordinary campaign to make sure that Afghanistan once again could enjoy its rich history of music, something that he was unusually qualified to know about. His doctoral thesis was a history of Afghan music for the last 1,000 years. In fact, as a little point of interest for today's program, I sent it to him. He's currently in Portugal, more about that later, but I sent it to him thinking he would be way too busy to comment, and he actually, not only did he comment about 10 minutes ago, he provided some corrections. So if you want to take out your pens or pencils, Paimane Bete Ke Khomar Astam is not an Afghan folk song. It was composed by Tarana Saz. Kamar Barik, before it was sung by Zahir Hawaga, it's a Tajik song by Lahuti. And Dastaz Talat, although Ahmad Zahir may have sung it, it was composed by Ustad Arman, whom I actually met and worked with during my time in Afghanistan, so I'm even more embarrassed that I didn't know that. So from Indianapolis to Portugal, I thank Dr. Sarmast for the corrections. So the first piece I would like to play, it's the only piece of Western classical music I'll play today, because throughout my time in Afghanistan, frequently Dr. Sarmast would get last-minute requests for teachers to play something at some embassy, whether the Belgian embassy or the Indian embassy, and as a violinist, particularly if there was no one else to collaborate with, the easiest thing to do would be to play a piece for unaccompanied violin by Bach. So I would like to share with you first, before I begin all of the Afghan music, the third partita by Bach. And I should also perhaps explain, for those of you who don't know, what I'm wearing. The shalwar kameez is a traditional Afghan garment. This particular one I bought at a market in Kabul. The karakol is a hat made by, from the wool of a fetal lamb, so about the least vegan thing you can imagine. And this was a gift on my birthday in 2010 from Dr. Sarmast, my boss. And the chapan is an extraordinary, very rare garment, which I'm very proud of. This was given to me by the Deputy Minister of Culture of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, Omar Sultan, in recognition of service to Afghanistan. So I will put this here. Tashakor, dere dere manana. I speak some Dari, but not very, my Pashto is not very good. I just only speak Dari. But I've unfortunately forgotten quite a bit. So the next four pieces, I'll tell you a little bit about them. A couple months after moving to Afghanistan, we got one of these calls from an embassy. It was the embassy of Italy in Afghanistan. They wanted a concert. And so I came up with an unaccompanied violin arrangement of perhaps the most famous and popular Afghan song of all, Biya Ke Birimba Mazar, Let's Go to Mazar. And if without bragging too much, I can pass on a compliment from my beloved boss, Dr. Sarmast. He said after the performance, how on earth could you play this Afghan song so movingly after only a couple months in the country? And that really meant a lot to me, because he was not always generous with his compliments, but I appreciate every one. And then Paimana Beteke Homarastum, and I'm grateful again to him for checking the program that you have in your hands 10 minutes before the concert started. Paimana Beteke Homarastum means approximately, give me another cup because I'm drunk already. So you can see it's from a period in Afghan history that was perhaps slightly less conservative than recent times. And it's composed by Tarana Saz. Then Kamar Barik is a very popular song that you would hear at a lot of Afghan weddings. It's, again, this is a correction from Dr. Sarmast. It's not by Zahir Hoaida, it's a Tajik song by Lahuti. And then finally in this next section, Dazemon Zabawatan is one of the great Afghan patriotic songs. First, the melody part is by Ustad Al-Almir, but the instrumental section, the part that would not be sung but played, is composed by the father of Dr. Sarmast, Salim Sarmast, who was the first Afghan who was a conductor, a composer, an arranger. He formed orchestras in the 50s and conducted orchestras from then until the 1980s. So really a giant of Afghan musical history, as is his son. And so I took this piece and arranged it for huge orchestra to play on the US tour. And that was also something that started out very small and became somewhat larger than intended, such as the event that you're currently attending, which I thought was initially going to be just much smaller, but thank you all for coming. It started out with the World Bank, who funded the school in Afghanistan. They requested that a few students should perhaps come to Washington to play for them in their headquarters privately. And we thought, well, if they're willing to fund that, because plane tickets are a lot of money, maybe they would bring the entire orchestra and we could play at Carnegie Hall and the Kennedy Center. And to my astonishment, after 16 months of very hard work, that's exactly what happened. And so on YouTube, there's still a video of me conducting this to a sold-out audience at the Kennedy Center in Washington on February 7th of 2013. And you can see in that audience many of the people who lined up for hours to get the free tickets were Afghan Americans who had not been back to their country in many years, and were very moved by the sight of young Afghans who had grown up after the Taliban's first time in power, who now were learning instruments and playing girls and boys side by side.
And it was fantastic.
Oh, and yes, Gary was there, I believe. bits I wanted to share that I forgot about those pieces. Kamar Barik, as mentioned, that you would hear at many Afghan weddings. I don't know if some of the Afghans with us remember hearing that at weddings, but one thing I used to love about the atmosphere at the Afghan weddings is the really over-the-top enthusiasm of the musicians or the DJ, where they would turn the volume up to the point where you'd expect the speakers to break and then call out things into the microphone like Distabekor Bishkada, which is the hand that is without work should be broken, meaning you're supposed to clap along. And the Dazemong Zabawatan, that arrangement, the one I just played, was done for national television. I went back in August of 2017 and was there for Independence Day, August 15th, which refers to the independence, actually it's around August 15th, that's in mid-August, sorry, I think the 19th perhaps, but it's referring to the year 1919 when Afghanistan became fully independent from Great Britain, which was controlling its foreign affairs at the time. And so recent and complex as Afghan history, the king who led that independence, Amanullah Khan, I frequently performed for his daughter, who is still alive. She'll turn 93 this year. And I met her frequently at concerts, Princess Hindia of Afghanistan, and I was not there in 2019, but I read she took place in the centennial of Afghan independence, which is pretty incredible. So moving on to the next segment, we have, I'm very grateful to Sylvia Mayuri for joining me, and we have 3 songs from the anthology of Afghan songs for viola and 3 songs from the one for violin. I'll be doing the viola ones also on my violin. These were anthologies that I made as a teacher so that young Afghan children could grow up playing their music alongside the Western classical music that was also part of the curriculum. So in this next group, we have Ay Saraban, a very popular song sung by Jalil Zaland, Ustad Zaland. Dastaz Talap, which again was another correction from Dr. Sarmast, although Ahmad Zahir, who's sometimes called the Afghan Elvis, because he looks like Elvis. I mean, he copied his style quite extensively. He sung it, but before him, it was sung by Ustad Arman, who I also met and worked with. He has not lived full-time in Afghanistan for quite some time. I believe he was based in Switzerland, but he would come back and forth to Kabul and sing with us for special concerts. And then third in this group, Madar Iman, sung by Ahmad Zahir. That is the song for Afghan Mother's Day, so I can't resist pointing out that both my father and mother are here, and they actually visited me in Afghanistan in 2010, which is when my mom got the necklace she's wearing today. In fact, the story behind that is that in Kabul you're supposed to bargain, and Dr. Sarmast very nicely joined us, but his magnificent skill at bargaining was completely undone when it became very obvious to the shop owner that this was the necklace that my mom wanted. So this is what she has. experience of the last 7 months, I was increasingly alarmed and then stunned when the Taliban did in fact take Kabul on August 15th of 2021. By August 14th, the day before, I was starting to get lots of panicked messages on WhatsApp and Facebook from Afghan friends, and that number increased dramatically until I was getting very little sleep and trying to answer hundreds of messages a day of people who I knew or people who knew other people who knew me, all contacting me, trying to get out in those first few days. And before long, I had a WhatsApp group that represented the interests of 326 Afghan musicians and did not know what to do. I had many conversations with Dr. Sarmast, who, by the way, in addition to being one of the most extraordinary people I've ever met, is also phenomenally lucky. In December of 2014, he was attending a concert where some of our students were playing incidental music for a play. The play was a play criticizing the Taliban for using suicide bombers. So in a horrific case of life imitating art, the Taliban sent a suicide bomber to that play. Dr. Sarmast later told me he dropped his phone, and in the minute that he went down to get his phone, the bomber blew himself up directly behind Dr. Sarmast. So him dropping his phone almost certainly saved his life. In another stroke of extraordinary luck, in August, before he had gone back to Afghanistan to start the music school, in the early 2000s, he had been based in Australia. And so in August of last year, he had gone back to Australia for a previously scheduled medical appointment, had nothing to do with the Taliban or Afghanistan or music or anything, and just so happened to be there when the Taliban took Kabul. So that enabled him to spend all of his time, I don't think he slept at all, on the phone, trying to figure out what to do with the hundreds of students, teachers, family members of those people represented by Afghanistan National Institute of Music. So what we agreed is he would focus on those people. It was too much for him to try to take every single musician out of Afghanistan. He would focus on the music school plus a very small number of folk musicians, and I would try to help everyone else however I could, meaning people from the small music department at Kabul University, former graduates of our school who couldn't be included in his plans, freelance guitarists, wedding singers, people who had appeared on Afghan Star, or people who had perhaps just attended a course once and wanted and deserved to get out. So in the intervening months, with an extraordinary group of people that Dr. Sarmast was able to put together that included Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Yo-Yo Ma, Daniel Barenboim, the Qatari royal family, the president of Portugal, Spotify, one of the leading PR firms of the United States, 21C Media, and the top lawyer for Lincoln Center, who's now one of the top people at the Juilliard School. With all of these people working together, he was able to relocate the entire Afghanistan National Institute of Music to Portugal by late 2021. So that's why he's in Portugal now. There's only a 4-hour time difference, so that's why he could be nice enough to proofread our program today. So he met with astonishing success, eventually getting over 300 people to Portugal. For me, it's been considerably slower. I have one guitarist studying at Nyack College in New York right now, one violinist who was my best student, who is now in Indiana studying at IU with my former teacher, Mimi Zweig, and one young guitarist is now in Canada. So that's 3 people. Very soon, in about early April, I'll be welcoming a small group to Mexico, I've been working there with Proyecto Habesha, which has 7 years of experience bringing Syrian refugees to Mexico. And oddly enough, since I'm American, I've found the Mexican government to be actually more receptive. I firmly believe that musicians want, need, and deserve to get out, perhaps more than anyone else, but I have yet to find that idea supported significantly here in the United States. So Mexico will accept whoever it can, it's just that the numbers are likely to be smaller than if I were able to get through to someone in the United States. Because what's happening in Afghanistan is, once again, the Taliban are persecuting musicians. Once again, music is illegal. Recently in Kunar, a young man who was listening to music in his car was killed. Some performers at a wedding were also killed. So the situation is very grave. And to give you an idea of the sort of music that's illegal, it's not just Western music, it's all of it. The Afghan music that I've been playing for you today. Pieces like the pieces on the final segment of this program, Dawatan Wadan Watan is a piece I'm very intimately acquainted with because for the inauguration of the school on June 20th, 2010, Dr. Sarmas wanted me to form the first orchestra to be formed in that country since the days of his father in the 1980s. An orchestra that would include girls and boys for the first time. And he got perhaps the most famous then living Afghan singer, Ustad Gulzaman, to sing one of his really hit patriotic songs, Dawatan Wadan Watan, which is in Pashto. And it says about how there's an eagle in every mountaintop ready to defend Afghanistan. And I had come up with an arrangement that had a lot of soft parts. And even in the rehearsals with Ustad Gulzaman, who originated this song and made it famous and composed it, I was insisting that it should have these soft parts. And Dr. Sarmas had to pull me out of the room and explain to me in no uncertain terms, this is the Afghan who composed this song, and you will do it how he wants. So I did change the arrangement so that it would be loud and patriotic at all times, and this version for violin and piano hopefully captures that. Bibi Sanam Janam, after that, is Afghan folk music. I learned that from Ustad Ghulam Hussain, the Rubab teacher at Anin in 2010. And then finally, Begzarota Begiryam is another hit by Ahmad Zahir, the Afghan Elvis. But this is the sort of music that is now illegal to listen to, impossible to study, impossible or very difficult to perform in Afghanistan. So I want to thank UUI for sponsoring Afghans who have been able to make it to this country, but to remind you and ask all of you that that's not enough. Although the world is very focused on Ukraine right now, which is as it should be, the crisis in Afghanistan continues. Musicians continue to face persecution. For someone like me, without all of the many, many contacts that Dr. Sarmast has, in fact, even for him with all of his contacts, recently it has been more difficult to try to get people out. So I very much encourage you, when you have a moment afterwards, you can look at the table outside, which has some memorabilia from my time in Afghanistan, and then please give whatever you're able and cash your check to Cultures in Harmony, my nonprofit, for our effort to bring Afghans, especially Afghan musicians, to safety and freedom elsewhere. Because even Afghans on my list who were not professional musicians, who simply enjoy music, in my opinion, they should have the freedom to listen to this music in their car, a freedom that is no longer available to them in Afghanistan. So I thank you very much for coming, and I hope that you will support this important initiative.